Hello! Last week we were popping off. We started our series of making a puppet completely from scratch with Betsy up here, and we also started our series with Dr. Cecil here, and we made him a hand with moving fingers, and I also very quickly ran you through his eyebrow mechanism that makes his eyebrows go up and down in shock and surprise. We're going to continue our journey with Dr. Cecil today, and I'm going to be making him some legs and feet so that he can eventually wear some really cute little safari shorts that I'm going to make him in the future. So let's crack on. Much like the body that we made for Betsy at the weekend, this is a really good time to start expressing your character and making whatever shapes you want. I've got a basic foot pattern here today, but you can make any shape. I'm talking flippers, fins, tails, or webbed feet. Anything will work as long as you've got the shape ready. So if you can't find a pattern that you like online that doesn't fit your character, you can totally draw one yourself, but I will be linking a fair amount to choose from in the description, so feel free to peruse. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Obligatory disclaimer before we do though, I use a mixture of very professional and incredibly unprofessional methods to make my puppets. If you find something that works better for you, then go ahead and do that. This is just how I do mine. I'm very much at fault. We're going to start with the foot first and then the legs. So what you're going to need is an outline of the foot shape that you're planning on using, and we're going to cut that out of foam. My supply is truly dwindling, but you should have some foam if you are making a puppet of your own. If you're not making a puppet of your own and you're starting with the feet first, I've linked this foam in the description for you. And we're going to start by making just one foot. And what I'm going to do is cut this pattern out twice and put it together to give it a little bit of thickness inside the actual foot that we're going to make. My foam's a bit bendy, so I'm going to use some glue to weigh that pattern down, and I'm going to draw it out twice on the foam. Alright, so I've drawn that out twice, and I'm now going to cut out my feet. If you're following with me completely, you don't have to cut it out neatly at all, because we are absolutely gonna damage this foot by the time we're finished with it, so don't worry too much about getting everything neat. We just need the basic shape cut out in the foam, and we need the actual line between the toes cut out as well, so they need to be able to bend. Just cut it out as best you can, but don't worry too much if you get it a bit wrong or accidentally slice through a bit of the toe, because it is a finicky shape to cut out anyway. It's totally fine and very much salvageable. So I've cut out my feet, and here they are ready to be combined. There's a few options you can do here. You can just put them together, or you could do what we did with our fingers and make bendable toes. It's totally up to you. Just in case you do want to do bendable toes, I'm going to show you how to do that. The way that we're going to do this is the same as how we did his hands. So what you're going to want to do is get a couple of pieces of cardboard, and through that cardboard you want to poke some jewelry wire and bend it to be an endoskeleton of the toes. You see here how the wire lines up to the length of the toes, so I'm just going to show you how to do that with the little toe. All I've got here is some jewelry wire, and you can see that it's really malleable and quite weak, and that's exactly what we want. And I've got my wire cutter here, so I'm just going to cut off a piece, and then I'm going to fold the piece that I've got in half, and I'm going to have a loop at the top, and I'm going to have two bits at the bottom, two straight bits. And then I'm going to get one of my thicker needles, and I'm going to see on my foot where I need to put the hole, because the hole needs to line up with the toe so that we can really easily get the endoskeleton in there. So I'm just going to poke a hole here where I want my hole to go, and I'm going to come out and wiggle my needle around and really refine that hole and get it really nice and big. And now I've got a little hole in there. I'm going to get these two loose ends, and I'm going to push it through the hole that we've made, bring it out the other side, and you see this loop here. I'm going to send those two loose ends into that loop, pull at the end, and twist. So I'm going to twist that into a knot of its own all the way down the length that you've put in. I always cut my wire a little bit longer than it needs to be, just in case I've messed up my estimations, and when I get there it's better to have more wire than less. So you can see here I've got my wire now, and I'm just lining up that cardboard filling that I've made. I'm seeing where the other wires are going to sit, and I'm going to place my wire here, and you can see where the toe ends. I'm just going to bring that round, and that bend there is where I'm going to fold it over again. So I'm going to fold it extra and twist it around as much as I can, and then just to make sure no spiky bits break through the foam and the fabric eventually, I'm just going to press down those spiky bits with my wire cutter, and there we have it. So when we put these together, we're just going to sandwich it in here like this and connect those two pieces. Just because I've made it, I'm going to include my endoskeleton in my foot today, but you totally don't need one if moving your toes is not of your interest. I'm sure you know by now if you've been following along at all, but in case you don't, this is where my methods get very unprofessional, because I don't have the facilities to have the big boy bag glues. So I put fabric glue on it and then I stitch around the edges to make sure she's not coming undone. I do the same thing with my hand skeletons, and I also think it adds a little bit of 3D-ness by the time that you're done with it, and it looks a little bit more handy. I find it a little bit flat on the edges with not much texture, but when you sew it together you kind of get that curvature of what an actual hand would be like, and it keeps the endoskeleton in place. So I'm going to glue this together with fabric glue and then stitch it up. You could just hot glue it, it's totally up to you. My nozzle has been getting a bit blocked recently, so I've had to open the lid and just go ahead with a paintbrush to get that glue out. If you're sewing it up as well, you can be very slapdash with it. It doesn't have to be neat or perfect. I've put my glue on, and whilst I let it get tacky, I'm just going to triple check that my endoskeleton is in the place that I want it to be. And like a sandwich, I'm going to place it on the top and connect it together with some pressure. Hold that down in place for a moment, and then I'm going to get to sewing the edges. None of this has to be neat at all at this stage, because you're still going to get that shape even if you sew unneatly. So just connect it together, really easy. And you should have something like this. This is going to be the inside of our foot. So now it's time to get our fabric and make a covering for it. When we're cutting out the fabric patterns of both our feet and our legs, we want to make sure that the fabric we're drawing onto is stretching across. So you can see here that if I pull this, not much is happening, but if I pull this, it's really stretchy, and we want the stretchiness of the fabric to be going across our pattern. So if I was going to draw a pattern there, I want the stretchiness going across like that. If you're making your foot pattern from scratch, you should have one pattern that looks like this, and then you should have another that looks like this. This one is for the bottom of our foot, and this one that's slightly bigger is going to go on the top, and that hole here is the hole that we're going to use to attach the leg to. So if you're making your pattern from scratch, just know that you need one shape that's the base and one shape that's a little bit bigger with a hole at the back where your leg is going to go. We've also got to think about the orientation of the foot when we cut out our pattern. So you can see here I've got my foot base, and I'm going to put that down, and I need it to line up with the actual foot that I've made, because I want this to be his right foot. So I want that big toe on the left, and I want this to be the bottom of the foot. So I've got my pattern here, and you can see how if I put it down like this, the pattern is in the perfect place. However, with the top piece you need to flip it over and draw it out, because if I was to draw it like this, you'd have to flip it over like that, and it would be wrong. Always make sure with the top piece that you draw it flipped, but with the bottom piece, feel free to draw it at the orientation that it's meant to be. It's kind of a hard thing to explain with the English language, but basically, yeah, flip the top bit, don't flip the bottom bit. I know I'm like a broken record, but when you're cutting out a pattern on fabric, just leave a little gap where you can, and that's going to be our seam line. Don't cut out a pattern directly on the line of the pattern. Give it a little bit of room to breathe. With this hole in our foot where our leg is going to go, I'm not going to cut it out exactly as it's shown. I'm going to just do a little line here. I'm not going to cut out the circle completely, because I want as much coverage as possible when I'm connecting that leg. So instead, I'm going to cut a few lines around that circle, just like this. So when we put our leg in, we can simply curl over those triangles, and it will make a much more seamless effect than if you were to just cut out the circle. So we've got our pieces of fabric here, and I'm going to lay them inside out so the pattern is facing me on the outside. I'm going to pin these pieces together, and then we're going to start stitching it. I'm not going to stitch it all the way, because we're going to eventually want to shove this in there. So all I'm going to do is sew from about here and do the toes, because they're quite fiddly and it's best to get them done up properly. And then I'm going to go all the way around and stop around here so that we can fit our foot in. And here's what that looks like. So you can see that I've only sewn from about here all the way around the toes, and I've stopped on the other side, and that's so we can flip it inside out and put in our foot structure. I'm going to flip this inside out now, and it might be best to get a Sharpie or a pen to push those toes through. It might just take a little bit of fiddling to encourage all those toes to come out properly, so just take your time with it. So we've got our skin and we've got our base, and we're going to very uncomfortably shove this in here and work it in until we've got it in the right area. This bit's a bit fiddly, and you might be here for some time trying to make these toes go in the right place, but persevere, we'll get there eventually. That took me so long, but here we are. We've put in the foot and it's ready to be attached to a leg. So once again, it's important for our leg pattern that the stretchiness of the fabric is going across, so make sure it's in that orientation. This is really totally up to you, because the leg doesn't have any function, so you can make it any shape that you want to make it. If you want to make it like a straight leg, literally just a long rectangle is all you need. But if you want to make it sort of look like it's got a knee and going up into a bit of a thigh, that's more of the shape that I'm going to show you today. I've got the top of my leg pattern here, and you can see how it goes out on an angle slightly, and that gives us the effect of a sort of thigh moving up and getting a bit bigger. And then I've got the the bottom of my pattern here, which is just the straight leg. I do encourage you to be as creative as possible and go nuts with whatever you've got in mind. I have most recently in the past with my dinosaur puppet Rex made long big tubes to be dinosaur feet. So you can really truly go for it and make whatever shape you want. So I'm just making sure that my fabric is nice and stretchy across the pattern, and I'm weighing it down with some glue balls, and I'm just going to draw around the pattern. And now I've drawn out the top of the leg here, I've got the other part of my leg pattern to attach to it. So I'm just going to draw that out, and now we're going to cut it out. So remember again to leave a lovely little seam gap for the future. I've got my leg pattern here all cut out and ready to go. You can see here on the pattern I've got this straight rectangle at the bottom, and then I've got a shape that sort of goes up, and that's because the shape that I'm using is much more of a realistic shape. So you've got the thinness of the leg, and then you get to the knee here and it goes up into sort of a bigger thigh area. You could totally just do a straight rectangle line for a more cartoony effect, but I quite like this because it adds a little bit of dimension as you go down the leg. It's totally up to you. The next step is to sew it together. So I'm just going to flip it in half with the pattern that I've drawn facing me, and I'm going to pin together the corners that we've drawn of the pattern on both sides. So I'm going to push the pin in here through the corner that we've drawn, and I'm going to bring it out on the other side where we've drawn our corner so that our patterns line up really nicely. And I'm just going to bring that needle back through the line and make sure it comes out on the line we've drawn on the other side. And then the next step is to stitch this together. If you want it to take about 5 seconds, you can use a sewing machine, but I'm going to hand stitch it because my sewing machine is terrible. So I'm just going to sew this by hand, and I'm going to, just like we've done with our pins to put it together, bring that needle through both corners and bring it back through that line that we've pinned, in and out for the whole way along. The sewing of the leg is finished. I've finished sewing up that seam. You can see here how it's bigger up here and smaller down here. So that's the thigh, and this line is the knee. So this small bit here will be the bottom of the leg, and that's the bit that we're going to attach to our foot. In regards to the foot, I've sewn together the edges that we left open so that we could shove the foot in there, but I've kept this bit open at the top, and we're now going to sew the leg onto the foot. You see where we cut out those triangle-y bits in the circle shape earlier? I'm just going to fold them back to give us that circle that our leg is going to sit through. So I've got a little hole like this, and now I'm going to flip this outside in. So this is what our leg looks like without any stuffing in it, and you can see it's got a really nice natural curvature, and we've got our seam at the back. So this is going to be the back of the leg, and this bit here will be the front of the leg. And what I'm going to do, it's kind of hard to see because Cecil's fur covers it so well, but we've got our back seam here, and I'm going to bring that back seam to the back of this circle gap, and I'm going to start to sew the leg in. So I'm going to fold the edges of our leg so that we don't get any fray bits, and I'm going to start connecting those two pieces together. I've made it halfway round, and you can just see how invisible my sewing has gone because of how textured his skin is. It's amazing. If you're making a puppet for the first time, I think just getting a texturized fabric would be absolutely the right way to go. It just means that any mistakes you make will not be seen. Not that I'm saying you will make mistakes, but this is a safe space. We now have an attached leg, but it is a bit floppy and does need a little something inside it. You can do, and you're meant to, use a foam structure, very similar in pattern to the pattern you would have used for the fabric, and make an interior lining. But I don't have much foam left, and also I don't really see the point in using foam for this bit when you don't have to. But what I do have is a trusty pillow that I no longer care about. I use this pillow to stuff the arms of Dr. Cecil, and I'm going to do the same with the leg. I don't think you need to have foam in the leg, and I don't really think it matters. I'd much rather use some bad quality stuffing that I've got lots of than expensive foam that I haven't got much of. I'm going to grab a bunch of stuffing from in here. You might need a lot. Maybe not that much. All I'm going to do is just break it off into batches, roll it up a little bit and shove it in the leg. And I'm also going to use my Sharpie to push it in. And it's important to bring that stuffing to the end of the leg so we don't get any gaps or bumps along the leg once it's finished. I always find that you need a lot more stuffing than you think you're going to need, and often smaller shapes actually require a lot more than they look like they do. Okay, here we go. This is it. This is our foot and leg combined. I think it looks amazing, and all you need to do now is rinse and repeat for your other leg. But when you do that, make sure that you make the foot opposite so that we've got both big toes in the middle here and we're going out with the smaller toes, just like human feet. It's Blue Peter time. Here's one I made earlier, complete with moving toes, just like the other one. And you can also see that just like human feet, they're facing the opposite way. So we've got the big toe here in both of them with the little toes cascading out. All that's left to do now is attach these morgans to this man. And the way we're going to do that that is by stitching them on the front of his body here. I'm just going to remove his head so I don't damage it, and I'm going to bring his body off the stand here and lie it down flat in front of me. You can stick your legs wherever you want really, but I'm going to put mine here at the bottom of his torso so that he'll eventually sit like that, which means he can sit really nicely on the top of my shelf with his little legs dangling down. I'm going to treat this as a sewing procedure because I want to keep his legs on all the time. You could glue them on, or you could sew up the top of the leg and attach it with safety pins, because sometimes puppet operators don't like to have legs on their puppet. So if you want them to be easily removable and be able to be put back on at any time, I would just sew the ends up here and attach a safety pin, and that way your legs can come on and off as you please. Triple check that you're getting those toes the right way round and the leg is on the right side. And I'm going to just shove the stuffing in as much as I can, and I'm going to pin the leg in the place that I want it so it kind of stays as still as it can as we sew it or glue it on. This can be a little bit fiddly. And now I've got it in the rough place that I want it, except for the foot on my face. I'm now going to begin by sewing the leg onto the torso. You join me in this very compromising position where I've nearly finished sewing on the first leg. All I'm doing is a simple in and out stitch. I'm just gonna tie a knot to secure my work. So that's one leg. We'll just put the other one on. There are some times where I question my life choices. Not often, but sometimes. So here he is with the legs and feet attached. I think they look so cute, and you've got posable toes if you ever needed that in life. But now he just looks like a naked man in front of me, so I think he needs some clothes. He just looks so strange sitting there naked now. His legs have just sort of added a persona to him that he didn't have before. I just want to kind of cover him up a little bit. He just seems a bit vulnerable. I hope you enjoyed today and it was easy enough to follow. If you are interested in making a puppet of your own from scratch, we have started that journey with Betsy up here. We've made her a head, neck and body so far. And if you are interested in puppetry and this is something that floats your boat, please do subscribe and ring that bell. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.